Hi, and greeting. I am here today to present you my game called Trinity. It's a game I started as a student project many years ago, but I took it back on my shoulder soon after the end of the semester. The game was originally made with the Unreal Engine 3, but I made it back from scratch using the Unreal Engine 4. On the project, I made most of the game design, all the level design, and all the visual art, as well as all the programming using the blueprint system of the Unreal Engine. That being said, all the sound, the VFX, and the music are made by this awesome sound designer called Nicole Vial, who made a fabulous job on the games. First thing first, let's be clear. This video is not for commercial purpose. It is mostly an essay to explain my design intention. This video will be divided in two. The first half will help you understand why I chose these game mechanics and the reasoning behind them. The other half, for you courageous watchers, is about how I introduce them in the games and how I pace their use so that the player explore and understand them well. To be more obvious, the first part is mostly a game design approach, while the second part is mostly a level design approach. Trinity has a simple game design, but one which is pretty solid and well thought. That being said, it is hard to explain the reasoning behind each game mechanic individually, simply because a large part of their logic comes from their relation between each other. That's why I will describe every one of them before explaining my design choice, with some exception. So Trinity, what is it? Well, it is a FPS puzzle game where the main concept is that you can give properties to certain platforms. Using these properties, you have to find a way to reach the exit. There is a grand total of 3 properties that you can give, and you can't give more than one property at the same time. Each properties are represented by a color. So let's start with the blue color. The blue color brings the platform from one point to another. These points are predetermined and unique to each platform. We can visually see them in the form of this blue orb and the line between them. After the end of his patrol, the platform stays still for a moment. If it is still blue, it will return to his original position. Same logic applies when he reaches his original position. After a while, if it is still blue, it will go to his target point. If you shoot the blue property on a blue platform, it will become neutral again. That being said, you can't shoot a platform in the middle of his patrol. You can only shoot it when it reaches the end of one of his 2 points and it is immobile. Well, that's something I want to explain right now. I wanted the player to be unable to interact with the platform during his patrol because it would create way too much possibilities. The multitude of positions could give a way for the player to break the games in many ways. This one creates some laser bridges coming from 2 of the platform faces. These bridges are walkable by the player. If you press the yellow again, it won't make the platform neutral again, as it was with the blue color. Instead, it will create 2 other lasers coming from the platform 2 other faces, and it will deactivate the other one. You can note that only one yellow platform is allowed at the same time. If you have a yellow platform in the scene, and you want to create another one, the first one will become neutral again. Finally, the third property is represented by the color red, and it creates a trampoline effect. This effect works in two ways. If you jump from a very low height, it will give you a minimum bounce. But if you jump from a very high height, the bounce effect will be proportional. There is a secondary effect, which is way more complex. When a yellow laser hits a red platform, the laser multiplies by its two perpendicular faces. And that can be accomplished as many times as you want, since there can be multiple red platforms. This way, you can create very complex laser paths. To add a level of depth and complexity, if two lasers hit each other, it breaks the whole sequence. So you can't make red platform left and right. You have to be very thoughtful. So this is the base. There are many other secondary game mechanics, but this is the foundation. I wanted to explain it well because while each of these abilities can give possibility in terms of puzzle design, it is mostly their synergy that gives them a whole new meaning. Let's start with the blue property. The direct and most basic use of this mechanic is to bring a player between 2 points. But because of the other mechanics, it has way more use. For instance, let's take an example on one of the earliest puzzles. There's a platform high up, a wall separating part of the level, and a platform reachable by the player. The exit is at the other side of the wall, in front of one of the two platforms. As you can see, the blue is used to place a platform and not only to bring you as a player in another position. And the same can be said about the two other colors. Sure, the red property was used for its vertical usage, and the yellow one for its horizontal advantage, but both in a less direct way, which show the potential and the flexibility of this system. And as you'll see, these game mechanics will have even more depth with the introduction of secondary game mechanics. The first secondary mechanic is the control device. How it works is quite simple. You stand in front of it and you activate it. And then things happen. A door open, a wall move, a block raise, you name it. There are basically two types of control devices. And while they work kind of the same way, meaning you have to be in front and use it, they have a very different puzzle logic. The first one just works once. You activate it and you can't use it again. This device has mostly one use in terms of puzzle logic, which is to create a second objective inside the same room before reaching the main objective, which is to get to the exit. The other one works with a many option logic. This one can be more complex because it asks the player to find the right option. And like I said earlier, they can change the space element in some way. That's a point I did not talk about so far, but that I need to talk about now, because it is the reason why this secondary mechanic has an impact on the three main mechanics of the games. Video game is mostly an art of space. It's how we evolve, discover, and progress throughout most games. This is particularly true with a 3D puzzle game, where the puzzle is a room itself and you have to think about its structure and its logic to solve it. Most of my mechanics have a logic in terms of space. In a matter of fact, all the mechanics can help the player progress inside the space. The red one in a vertical way, the yellow one in a horizontal way, and the blue one depending on its patrol path. But most important, the synergy I mentioned before work only if the space and the geometry of the level allow it. So thinking about how some options affect the level, and how to have the proper setup to make the platform respond to each other in the most logical way to solve the puzzle, have a logic within the overall game design. Now, let's talk about the laser switch. The effects of the laser switch are similar to the control device, meaning they can change some element in the room. The difference being, they are activated by the laser bridge of the yellow platform. There are two types of laser switch. One where only one laser switch is needed, and the other one when two or more laser switch need to be activated at the same time. In its purest form, the one laser switch brings a new meaning to the yellow platform, since the laser becomes much more than a simple way to travel space. By extension, it brings a new depth to the blue color, because placing platform can be important in more situations. In its most complex iteration, meaning when two or more laser switches need to be activated, the systemic synergy is more complete. Not only do you have to think carefully about the position using the blue property, not only do you have to use wisely the yellow property, but you also have to use in a clever manner the red property, so that the laser multiplication effect creates the adequate path necessary to solve the puzzle. This is probably the most complex and the most complete secondary mechanic, and the one we use the three platform color synergy the most. But there are still three other secondary game mechanics to present. Two of these mechanics work in a pretty similar way. The blue barrier and the green barrier. The blue one blocks the player but not the laser bridge, and you can still shoot through it. The green barrier works the opposite way, meaning that you can't shoot through it and it blocks the laser bridge, but you as a player can pass through it. They mostly limit the player possibilities. The blue barrier limits the player movement, and the green barrier limits the player ability to interact with the platform. And finally, the shooting pyramid. How the thing works is simple. There is a pyramid aiming and shooting a platform at a certain rate. If the link between the pyramid and the platform is blocked, by a wall for example, the pyramid won't be able to shoot the platform. If there is another platform between the pyramid and the platform, the other platform will be shot instead, even though the original platform will always be the one aimed by the pyramid. When you enter a room with a pyramid shooting yellow, the yellow property is not available for the player for the duration of the puzzle. This mechanic is used way less often than the others. It sure can offer interesting puzzles, but it can also be annoying. In other words, this mechanic limits player possibilities, which can be interesting in some cases, but a very big flaw in others. There are mostly two interesting things about this mechanic. First, it creates an element of timing, something I did not want to overuse, but that can change the pacing of the game. Second, by limiting the position of the yellow laser origin, it changed the puzzle dynamic. It also brings variety to certain puzzles, and it is something crucial to keep the player's attention. And this is overall all my game mechanics. And while my game design might be a bit simple, it is also a solid one with a lot of potential, and with all the pieces responding to each other in a nice way. Having a strong core design is important, but implementing it in a clever way is also part of a good game, and it is what keeps a game alive. While I can't explain all my puzzle design, I will talk in the next part how I introduce all the mechanics and how I pace them throughout the games. For the game, I want to teach the mechanics to the player without classic and obvious explanation, simply by letting my level design and the player logic making all the teaching. My games start in a very simple manner, and I'll simply show you the first 5 seconds of the games. As you can see, in these 5 seconds, the player learns his basic control with the help of the level design. First, the straight corridor teach him that he can walk. Then, there is a turn, teaching him that he can turn and look around. Finally, there is a low block, forcing and teaching the player that he can jump. In this very short section, the player learns very fast his basic movement. That being said, I am aware that the absence of story in my games means that I don't need to give a proper context to these mechanics. The pro is that I can concentrate on the geometry of the level to teach the game design. The con is that the hook is far less effective for the player, but I digress. Now, as you can see, the player does not have a crosshair. That's because he can't use his ability to transform platform. This is the logic of this tutorial level, to limit the player options so that he can learn in a more progressive manner. After learning his basic movements, the player has his first interaction with the blue property. The section is quite simple. He sees them in action. Just after, he physically interacts with one platform. Then, he acquires his blue property. There is no clear explanation, but the player is in a dark room and there is a glowing platform, as well as a frame showing the control. The player, by lack of option, will end up trying the button on the platform to be able to progress. The next puzzle is quite simple. The player has to transform the platform to reach the exit. This puzzle teaches nothing new, but it is a repetition necessary so that the player learns better the mechanics. Then, he acquires the red property. The blue one becomes inactive. The next step is similar to the blue property. The player sees the red property in action in the form of a ball bouncing on a red platform. A little after, the player is in the corridor. The exit is high up, but still visible. There is nothing else except a platform on the ground. The limitation of the level design, plus the ball demo earlier, will incite the player to try and find the solution. It is basically the same for the third color. The mechanic is shown, then experimented by the player in a level limited which complement the game mechanic. After getting and learning all three main abilities in an individual manner, the player gets all of them. The player has two basic puzzles before the end of the level. These puzzles teach two things. It teaches the players that he can switch weapon. The level is designed so that the player has to use more than one property on the same platform to progress in both puzzles. That's all for the first level. The second level is about the control device. Again, I use a very limited level design strategy. The player is stuck in a very limited space, and you need to activate a control device to progress. There is two main reasons why the teaching works. The puzzle is simple, and the effect is visible. You see a second control device some puzzle after. This one has three options. This teaches the player that some device has many options. I choose three options because it will make more emphasis on the option number and make it more distinct from the other one before. Again, I followed the same rule. The puzzle is simple and the outcome is visible. Finally, there's another control device. The puzzle is designed so that you had to use it once, interact with the platform, and use the control device again. This teaches that sometimes many options can be useful. And that's all there is to learn for this level. The next level is focused on the learning of the proportional bounce effect of the red platform. It is a simple mechanic, so I show it in a simple manner. First, I create a semi-scripted sequence where the player slides a ramp and rebounds on a red platform. Then, I create a puzzle that forces the player to learn the proportional bounce mechanic. This puzzle is really focused on this mechanic. Also, the level is designed so that the yellow and the blue properties have very limited use. The rest of the level simply use this mechanic in many ways. The next level introduces the laser switch. I follow a similar pattern here where I start with a scripted sequence. There is a platform in front of the player. To reach it, the player has to use the yellow property, which in turn activates a laser switch and the opening of a door, both in the player field of view. When the player reaches the platform, he has to either change the laser direction or change the color, forcing him to reactivate the laser switch either because he understood the first time or by experimentation. Either way, he will understand the mechanic at the end of this puzzle. The next mechanic I introduce in the next level is the laser multiply. Everything starts with a scripted sequence showing the player the laser multiply mechanic. Then, the player walks along the laser. A cinematic is triggered and a series of laser multiply activate until a laser hits another laser. Then, the player falls and looks up, seeing red platforms. The cinematic is there to teach three main things. First, to explain that the laser can be multiplied. Second, to explain that the laser multiply sequence can be broke. Third, by seeing a red platform at the end, the player will understand that the red property has something to do with the laser multiply mechanic. Now, look at this puzzle. As you can see, this puzzle asks the player to use the laser multiply mechanic, but it also teaches him that sometimes two laser switches need to be activated at the same time. As you can see so far, I tried to represent the mechanic in a gradual manner, but also from more simple to less simple. That's why you might find it weird that the next mechanic is about the blue barrier, a mechanic far less complicated than the laser multiply. The reason is simple. With a limited number of levels, I wanted to use the most of this mechanic, since the laser multiply is one of the most interesting ones, and one that uses the most the three main properties. The way I introduce the blue barrier is quite simple. There is a blue barrier, a laser switch that deactivates the blue barrier, and a platform in front of the laser switch. You transform the platform in yellow to activate the laser switch and progress, telling you pretty much all you need to know about the mechanic. The green barrier is introduced in the next level. The player is in a narrow corridor and he passes through a green barrier to progress. Then, he needs to interact with a platform at the other side of a green barrier. Since he can't, he is forced to jump to reach the platform. Next level and final mechanic, the shooting pyramid. This mechanic is first presented in a non-puzzle situation. The pyramid shoots a platform at a certain rate. This platform can activate a laser switch or deactivate a block. The player simply has to wait for the right timing to pass through the block and progress. And that's all the mechanic. I tried to be pretty gradual, while teaching my mechanic simply by going by the simple rules of one mechanic by level. After learning the shooting pyramid, there is 4 levels remaining, letting the player simply enjoy the tools and obstacles he learns and masterizes for the last bit of the game. As you can see, my game might lack an explosive setup, something I justified by the abstract nature of my game. That being said, I managed to teach all my game mechanics through small presentation and the level design, while also letting the player think and explore to learn the game design by himself. This is the end of my presentation. I hope you appreciate. This is my first video of this kind, so please don't hesitate to comment below if you have any suggestion to improve this video. Thanks for watching.